The cry in the ice wind. The wind howled like a wild beast. The sky above was white, filled with endless snow. Ice covered the ground like broken glass, and the air was so cold it could freeze skin in seconds. John Carter wrapped his coat tighter and checked his scanner again. He had come to planet Zarno as part of a research mission, but the storm came fast. Now he was alone, stuck in a broken shelter in the middle of the Arctic region. His fingers shook as he tried to fix the heat core. It was his only hope to survive. But then, beep, beep his scanner picked up something strange. A sound. Not wind, not machine. A cry. Faint, weak, like a child. John's eyes narrowed. "Is someone out there?" he whispered. He put on his thermal gear, grabbed a flare, and stepped into the storm. The cold hit him like knives, but the sound was still there, crying, soft and broken. He walked through the snow step by step. His boots sank deep, visibility was near zero. Then he saw a shape, small, curled, half buried in snow. He ran forward and knelt down. It was a girl. An alien girl. Skin light blue, hair white like snow. Her clothes were torn, her fingers red and stiff from the cold. She wasn't moving. Her lips were blue, her eyes half open. "Hey!" John shouted. "Can you hear me?" No answer. He touched her neck, faint pulse. Still alive. Barely. Without thinking, he lifted her in his arms. She was cold as ice and light as feathers. He turned back, fighting the wind, and rushed toward his shelter. Inside, he placed her on the heating bed. He removed her frozen clothes carefully and covered her in heat blankets. Her skin began to glow faintly, not human, definitely alien, but she looked like a child, 10 maybe 11. John gave her warm drops of water through a small tube. He rubbed her hands, trying to bring back warmth. "Come on," he whispered. "You're not dying today." The heat core blinked weakly but held. Minutes passed. The wind outside screamed, but inside the shelter, silence grew heavy. Then suddenly, she coughed. John turned quickly. The girl blinked slowly. Her eyes were deep violet. She looked scared. Her lips trembled, trying to speak, but no words came. "It's okay," John said, holding his hands up. "You're safe here. I won't hurt you." She stared at him like a frightened animal. The mark of the outsider. John noticed her feet were bleeding. Carefully, he cleaned the wounds and wrapped them in soft cloth. While treating her, he saw something on her back, a strange mark, a glowing symbol like fire trapped under skin. What was that? Suddenly, the radio crackled. John turned and adjusted it. An alien voice spoke in static tones, but a translation came through: "Let her die in the snow. She is cursed." John froze. What the hell? The message repeated, same cold voice: "Do not bring her in. Let the wind take her. It is the law." John looked back at the girl. She stared at him with wide, helpless eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why she was out there, but he knew one thing: he couldn't leave her. He sat beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "No one's dying in my care," he said softly. "You're not a curse. You're just a child." The shelter's lights flickered, and the wind outside roared like it was angry. But inside, the little alien girl closed her eyes and, for the first time, looked at peace. John didn't know it yet, but this moment would change his life forever. Because this was no ordinary child, and powerful eyes across the stars had just seen what he had done. The alien girl slept quietly, but her breath was shaky. Her glowing skin flickered like a dying flame trying to stay alive. John Carter sat near the heater, watching her. He had added extra fuel to keep the shelter warm. It was dangerous, he had limited supplies, but he couldn't let her freeze again. Suddenly, her body twitched. Her hand reached out in her sleep, fingers curling as if grabbing something in the air. Then she whispered something, "Vel'Ria." John leaned in. "Is that your name?" She didn't answer. Outside, the wind screamed against the shelter walls like a warning. But the storm wasn't the only thing howling that night. Suddenly, boom! The shelter shook. John jumped up. He grabbed his scanner. Something was flying above, circling like a hawk in the snow. He turned off all lights and peeked through the ice window. A black drone, alien-made, red lights blinking. It hovered above, scanning the area. John's heart pounded. "They're looking for her," he whispered. He checked the shelter signal blocker, still active. They couldn't trace her yet, but they were close. Just then, the radio buzzed again. Static at first, then a harsh voice in alien tongue. The translator crackled to life, "The child must be returned. She is not to be saved. She carries death. The truth beneath the ice." John turned off the radio. He didn't care what they said. He looked at the girl, still sleeping, her skin pulsing with faint blue light. "What did you do that was so terrible?" he whispered. The drone circled 3 more times, then flew away. John exhaled slowly. They would be back, he was certain of it. As night fell, the storm grew stronger. The shelter walls creaked under the pressure. The temperature dropped further. John checked the fuel gauge, dangerously low. They had maybe 12 hours before the cold would win. He sent an emergency signal to the research base. No response. The storm was blocking everything. "Looks like it's just you and me, kid," he said, adjusting the girl's blankets. Suddenly, her eyes opened. This time, they were alert, focused. She looked at John, then around the shelter. "You're awake," John said, smiling. "Can you understand me?" The girl nodded slowly. "I'm John. Do you have a name? Is it Vel'Ria?" She nodded again, touching her chest. "Vel'Ria." Her voice was soft, musical. "Why were you out in the storm, Vel'Ria? Why do they want you to die?" Fear flashed in her eyes. She touched the mark on her back, then pointed to the sky. "The stars?" John asked. "You're from another world." She shook her head. She tapped her chest again, then made her fingers dance like flames. "Fire? Energy?" John guessed. She nodded enthusiastically. "You have power. Energy inside you." She smiled sadly, then touched John's scanner. Immediately, it lit up bright, showing readings off the charts. All systems suddenly charged to 100%. Even the shelter's heat core surged to full power. John stared in amazement. "You did that?" Vel'Ria nodded, but then winced in pain. The mark on her back glowed brighter. "They fear you," John realized. "Because of what you can do." She nodded again, tears in her eyes. "But you're just a child. You can't control it." Vel'Ria touched her head and made an explosion gesture with her hands. "It hurts you," John said. "When you use your power." She nodded, looking exhausted. The radio crackled again. This time, a different voice, "Human researcher, this is Elder Krax of the Zarnian Council. You harbor a dangerous entity. The child's energy signature is detectable even through your shields. She must be returned to us for containment." John picked up the transmitter. "She's a child, not an entity. And she's hurt. She is a danger to herself and others," the voice replied. "Her kind absorbs energy from all sources, machines, living things, even stars. They cannot control the absorption. They destroy worlds. That is why she was sentenced to the ice. To freeze her power. For the good of all." She's scared, John argued. She needs help, not punishment. You do not understand, the elder said. We've sent retrieval units. Hand her over, or face the consequences. The choice. John switched off the radio. He looked at Vel'Ria, who was trembling now, not from cold, but from fear. I won't let them take you, he promised. We'll figure this out. The scanner beeped. 3 ships approaching. They had maybe 20 minutes. John grabbed his emergency pack and began to plan. The research station was too far, 50 kilometers across the ice. But there was an old mining facility 10 kilometers south. Abandoned, but the deep tunnels might shield Vel'Ria's energy signature. We need to go, he told her. Can you walk? Vel'Ria tried to stand but collapsed. Too weak. Okay, plan B. John wrapped her in thermal blankets and strapped her to his back. He put on his emergency suit, grabbed minimal supplies, and a pulse rifle. Not much against Zarnian ships, but better than nothing. As they prepared to leave, Vel'Ria touched John's hand. Her eyes asked the question, why? Because it's the right thing to do, John said simply. And I think you're worth saving. They stepped out into the howling storm. The cold was brutal, but John's suit provided some protection. He activated his scanner's terrain mapping and began the trek south. Behind them, lights appeared in the sky. The Zarnian ships, closing in. John quickened his pace, pushing through deep snow. Vel'Ria clung to him, her small body warm against his back. The mark on her back pulsed, visible even through the blankets. Halfway to the mining facility, the first ship spotted them. A spotlight cut through the snow, illuminating them. Halt! A voice boomed. Return the child. John ducked behind an ice ridge, pulling out his rifle. Not happening. The ship hovered closer. A hatch opened, and armed figures descended on cables. Last warning, human, the leader called. John aimed his rifle, but before he could fire, Vel'Ria slipped from his back. She stood in the snow, her eyes glowing violet. The mark on her back burned bright. No. John reached for her. Don't. But it was too late. Vel'Ria raised her hands. Energy surged from her body, a wave of blue light that enveloped the ship. The engines failed instantly. The ship dropped from the sky, crashing into the ice 100 meters away. Vel'Ria collapsed. John caught her, shocked by what he'd seen. The girl looked up at him, her eyes dimming. Protect others from me, she whispered in broken English. John understood then. She hadn't been abandoned out of cruelty. She'd been isolated to prevent her from absorbing energy from populated areas. Her powers weren't just dangerous, they were hungry, constantly feeding. He looked at the crashed ship, at the Zarnians struggling in the snow. They weren't villains. They were trying to protect their world. But as he held the weakened child in his arms, he knew he couldn't give her up. There had to be another way. I made you a promise, he told her. And I'm keeping it. He lifted her again and continued toward the mining facility. The other ships were closing in. They had minutes at most. A new beginning. They reached the mining facility just as the other ships landed. John carried Vel'Ria through the frozen entrance and deep into the tunnels. The facility had been abandoned for decades, but some systems remained intact. In the central chamber, John found what he was looking for, an old energy converter. The miners had used it to process raw minerals. If his theory was right, it might help Vel'Ria. He set her down gently beside the machine. Vel'Ria, I think I understand now. Your body absorbs energy uncontrollably. That's why they put you in the ice, to slow the absorption. She nodded weakly. But what if there was a way to release that energy safely? To channel it? He began working on the converter, reconfiguring it to act as a conduit. Above, they could hear the Zarnians entering the facility, their heavy footsteps echoing through the tunnels. "We don't have much time," John murmured. He connected the final wires. The converter hummed to life. "Vel'Ria, touch this," he said, pointing to the input node. "Let the energy flow through you into the machine." She hesitated, fear in her eyes. "Trust me," John said. "Please." With trembling fingers, she touched the node. Immediately, blue energy coursed from her body into the machine. The mark on her back flared bright, then gradually dimmed. The converter channeled the energy, converting it to heat that radiated throughout the facility. Vel'Ria gasped, her eyes widening in surprise. For the first time, relief crossed her face. The pain was subsiding. The Zarnians burst into the chamber, weapons raised. Elder Crack stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Vel'Ria. "Step away from the child, human," he ordered. "Look," John said, gesturing to the converter. "She's not dangerous if she can release the energy safely. She doesn't have to be isolated. She doesn't have to suffer." The elder approached cautiously, studying the converter and the now stabilized child. "This is unexpected," he admitted. "Our scientists believed her kind could not control their absorption." "She can't, not yet," John agreed. "But with time and the right technology, she could learn. Exile in the ice isn't the answer. Help is." The other Zarnians lowered their weapons. Elder Cracks knelt beside Vel'Ria, speaking to her softly in their language. She responded hesitantly. "She is the last of her kind," Cracks explained to John. "Her people destroyed themselves with their own power. We feared she would bring the same fate to our world." "She's a child who needs guidance," John insisted. "Not punishment." After a long silence, Elder Cracks nodded. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach, human. Our ways have been harsh. But survival has demanded caution." "Let me help," John offered. "My people have experience with energy conversion technology. Together, we might find a permanent solution." 3 months later, a new facility stood on the edge of the Zarnian capital city. Not a prison, but a research center dedicated to understanding and safely harnessing energy absorption. Vel'Ria had her own quarters, decorated with plants and books. The mark on her back no longer caused pain. Each day, she spent hours with John and Zarnian scientists, learning to channel her powers through specially designed converters. The energy she released powered parts of the city. What was once feared as a curse became a gift. On the last day of John's official mission, before he would return to Earth, Vel'Ria approached him with a small, glowing crystal. "For you," she said, her English much improved. "Remember." "I'll come back," John promised, taking the crystal. "This isn't goodbye." She smiled, touching his hand. "You saved me. Not just my life. My future." John looked at the city beyond the window, at the lights powered by Vel'Ria's gift. "Maybe we saved each other," he said. As his ship lifted off, John watched the research center grow smaller below. He had come to Zarno seeking scientific discoveries. Instead, he had found something far more valuable, a reminder that compassion could bridge even the vastness between stars. The crystal in his pocket glowed warm against his heart, a promise that he would return. And when he did, there would be more work to do, more bridges to build between his world and hers. Some called it unthinkable, a human-defying alien law to save a child who carried destruction within her. But to John, it had been the only choice. Because in the coldest places, the warmest acts of kindness matter most. The end.